Yo, what's up, guys? Just want to make this video and I want to talk about being a warrior artist. And I think that the best personality that a man should strive to have is that of a warrior artist. You want to be physically strong. As a warrior, you want to lift weights, you want to learn how to fight, you want to know how to wrestle, how to box, things like that. But you also want to have the creativity as an artist. You want to know how to sing, you want to know how to play an instrument, you want to know how to paint, you want to know how to write poetry, how to write a story. And both are equally important because it seems like in today's world, you either have one or the other. You got guys that are physically fit, but they have no creative abilities whatsoever. But then you have guys that are creative, can play instruments and things like that, but they don't really touch iron. They don't really test themselves physically. They don't participate in martial arts. They don't do things like that. And they're very weak in that sense, but they have that creativity to them. And it's either one of the other. In today's world, it seems like there's either one or the other, but you don't really find many guys that are both. You don't find guys that are creative, but also capable of breaking every bone in your body. And you want to be able to have that sort of power as a man, especially as a man of God. And I think that a lot of us children of God, we've been in positions in life where we've been weak and we've been strong. Most of us, we had an upbringing where we were seen as weak. We lived in fear, we lived in insecurity, we lived in confusion, we lived in fog. And as a result of that, we were sort of prey. A lot of people, they saw us as a target, as somebody that they could abuse, somebody that they could disrespect, somebody that they could bully. And we went through that. We went through that furnace of being tormented, experiencing what it's like to be bullied. But then when we woke up to who we truly were, we started to become strong. We started lifting weights. We started to discipline ourselves. We tested ourselves. We went through, martial arts. We grappled. We trained. We rolled. We did Muay Thai. We boxed, and we did things like that. And we became very strong. We became sort of like this confident, unstoppable warrior. But we have both perspectives. We have the perspective of the kid that was being bullied, but we also have the perspective of the guy that can, sort of beat everybody else up in the room. And that's not to brag, because there's plenty of people out there that do train, and we're not necessarily the best fighters, but we can handle ourselves, if push comes to shove. And you want to be able to have both of those things. You want to train, you want to be strong, but you also want to be able to write poetry. You want to be able to write something that's going to cut to the heart of the human existence, which is really just suffering. A lot of people are suffering in this world, and they need light. They need that inspiration. They need somebody that can write psalms, kind of like David, who was able to write psalms in the Bible. But then you also have these legends, like these Greek legends, like Orpheus, who was able to create music. You want to be able to have that sort of edge to you. You want to be that legendary man who is a warrior, poet / artist. You want to be able to have those things so you can lead. You want to be strong so that way you can be a leader. You want to be capable of fighting so that way you can protect the people around you. But you also want to be an artist because it's important to empathize with people. And if you're either one of the other, you're going to be lacking. If you are just a strong, sort of warrior guy that's just lifting and fighting all the time, but you don't really have empathy, you're really going to be lacking when it comes to being empathetic to those around you. But if you're just on the other side of the coin, if you're this guy that's just weak, but you're an artist, but you can't really protect the people around you, you're not going to be able to be a leader, and you're not going to be able to be somebody that, people can look to in that regard. So you want to have both. You want to be a warrior, and you also want to be an artist. And by doing so, you're going to be able to lead and inspire people and be a light to those in a dark place. So strive for both. Be strong, be a warrior, and be creative. Hope you guys like this video. I'm out.